Welcome to the Kind Leader Podcast, where empathy meets action in the world of leadership. Your host, Gino Degregori, engages with innovators and seasoned professionals from diverse sectors, all demonstrating the power of leading with kindness. And now, your host, Gino Degregori.
Welcome to the Kind Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Gino Degregori. Today, we have the honor of welcoming Kevin Briggs to our podcast. Kevin is the Vice President of the Public Sector at 𝗞𝗲𝘆. I've known Kevin for a few years now, and I've always been impressed with his personality, passion, and his amazing drive to bring value and rise together with his partners and customers. So Kevin, could you please share with our audience a little bit about yourself?
Well, thank you, Gino. It's a pleasure to be here. There's a lot people can, learn about me and my background probably on LinkedIn and seeing that CV, that cover letter. I think there's a couple of things that I would probably share with people that you can't learn from my LinkedIn profile and that journey of how I got to where I am, right? We can see the backgrounds of the companies I worked for and the responsibilities I had. But, as I was thinking about the drive in here to your office and this podcast, and thank you again for welcoming me here, I was thinking about kind of where I got into business. And one of the couple things I thought about was trends, mentorship, adaptability, goals. And I think one of the most interesting things is open to serendipity. And I got into business after studying marketing at Virginia Tech. And I went into not sales, not marketing, not business development, but financial control in finance. I did that because of the trends that were happening. I'm going to age myself right now, but the Enron situation was happening, Arthur Andersen, financial control and accountability in finances. And I was like, let me go learn about that because that was a pretty hot topic.
Right.
And it was actually very interesting. Graduating with a marketing major and looking for a job in finance, I got a lot of rejections. And then I found a leader who was a kind leader maybe, and saw who I was and what I wanted to do and my passion. And he brought me on into a finance organization. Wow. Yeah. So that was, I think, from the first aspect of just, my journey is a trend in like maybe you do something that might be outside of your lane. Mentorship, as I think through the journey is there's one common theme that I've seen is that I've worked for strong personalities, both strong leaders, sometimes polarizing leaders, but they were all very successful in what they did. And I learned a lot from that. Adaptability is another thing I thought about, as I mentioned a few minutes ago there, is the ability to do different things. My first job, I had an opportunity to do everything from writing proposals to doing occupancy costs for a facility like an office, right?
Nice. Yeah.
And then, goals. I did the one thing, and you think about career development plans, CDPs, as one person I worked with used to call it, is a goal I found early on was there was a leadership program at one of my first companies I worked at. And I said, I need to be in that program. And how I get there, don't know how it's going to work, but I want to be in that program. And that was a really transformational opportunity for me. And I sought that out and accomplished it. And then open to serendipity, unplanned opportunities. I think about one in particular. I had a career that was going very well at my first company. And my partner, my wife, Alicia, she was looking for a new job. And I wanted to help her with that endeavor. And we set up shop in the living room, and we had like a resume building conversation and a job hunt conversation. And I wasn't actively pursuing anything. I wasn't looking for a new job. I wasn't looking for a new career. But I saw a posting and I saw this description of what they were looking for. And I was like, that's like written for me.
Yeah.
That's like, that says Kevin on it almost in a way. And it was for a little company called Microsoft.
Right.
Yeah. So open to serendipity, right? Yeah. And things that just happen. Yeah. So this is a little bit of background on me that maybe, tells a story.
Yeah.
And kind of where I've come from and how I've arrived to where I am today.
I love it. I love it. Thank you for sharing the background, successful, background too. And it's a different perspective on how people describe themselves, because it gives the storytelling and more better connection, right? When people listen to it. So thank you for sharing, for sure. And I do want to pull a few threads here. I'll come back to it. But before we get into it, the first question that I love asking my guests here is, what does being a kind leader mean to you?
Well, I was looking back through your episodes, 24 of them, I think now. I might be the 25th. So lucky number 25. First is like so many great people. I was looking at the episode with Janice, trust and honesty and feedback. The episode with Charlie, focusing on, I think it was on right versus who's right. And Javier, a leader who I actually worked for at one point. So smart. A leader, that is kind and empathetic, and one that talked about trust, I think, in his in his episode. So many great people. I kind of feel, honestly, a little out of place given their experience and what they've accomplished. But a kind leader, I think there's 4 things that come to mind for me. There's no right or wrong, I think, in these. There's all the kinds of different ingredients in what you make it your own. But 4 things come to mind for me is empowerment, collaboration, how empathy unlocks collaboration, and listening that supports empathy. So like, if you think about these like as almost a triangle, like starting with, listening that supports empathy, is kind leaders tend to, in my experience, listen more than they speak. They learn about people and teams and ideas and challenges. That listening can unlock empathy because, from my experience, those kind leaders understand and they share the feelings for others. They have a relating to that situation because they've been listening. And then that empathy unlocks collaboration that can bring teams together because they understand that. They have a fundamental understanding of it because of the different views that they put together, and they can achieve more through that collaboration. And I think also with that collaboration comes empowerment. Kind leaders empower others to grow and succeed. They provide opportunities for learning and development, advancement, and I think one of the things that's interesting is in thinking through people that I've worked for and alongside of is a kind leader trusts their team with responsibility that can help them grow. They give them that opportunity. So, listening, empathy, collaboration, and empowerment, a couple of things that come to mind for me.
Beautiful. Well said. I love that description. Different angle, again, a different approach in how you define it, because as you explained it, and I like the structure. So there's several bullets, especially with empowerment. Empowerment is key, but you can't give empowerment unless the people trust you. And there's a trust behind that, right? Because there's also an expectation on what's needed from an accountability perspective. So you say, hey, I need, as part of a team, I need you to execute, and you're leading a team and you're telling people to need to execute. You're empowering them to get that done, but you need to make sure that there's trust between the two to ensure that those things are being executed properly, right?
Yes. 100%. Yeah.
So great definition. I love how you broke it down into the segments, and I think we can even pull a lot of things from that here in a second. But I want to come back to your how you describe yourself, and you talked about serendipity. I do like that. That resonated with me very well. And you shared, the serendipity story about the job hunting and how it just came about of you doing that. I live my life, to be honest, and sharing with the audience here. The way I see life is opportunities always come in. And it's how you see those things, right? And the serendipity that you attract or that happens to you at that time, that's how you live life. And because if you see it, I don't know if you've heard in the past in some of my episodes, I talk about your mind is so powerful. What you think is what you are. And the things that you're thinking, and you're thinking positive things, you're thinking things that are going to be impacting others or whatever, that is what really resonates with people, and you attract those people, right? You attract the people that the things that you're thinking. So when you talk about serendipity, coming back to that, is like people miss out on so many great opportunities,
right?
Because they don't see those things in front of them. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
And, like from your perspective, you've lived a great career, and it sounds like not just that one example. Do you have other examples that you can share about serendipity that has happened? Because I have a few and I can share here in a second.
Yeah. I'd love to hear one of yours, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I'd love to hear one of yours. And then also, I'm the 25th. What have you learned in these 24 episodes that are in the can and the great conversations you've had?
Oh, wow.
Like,
Okay.
are there themes? Like, what surprised you? So, like, I'd love to hear from you and flip the script a little bit here.
There you go.
is what are those serendipity moments for you? And what surprised you about the 24 episodes or not surprised you?
Great 2 questions. And thank you for flipping it on me. Now you put me on the spot here. Huh? This was not planned. From a serendipity perspective, I shared this in the past, I believe. I came to this country in 1991. I'm going to date myself here. I was 11 years old. Mm-hmm. Came into with the visiting visa. My dad, my mom, and my sister. Just the 4 of us. Not knowing a word of English. I'm just a kid, 11, like and then we're from Miami, we went all the way to Arlington, Virginia here. So in Arlington, Virginia, my dad had a friend. My dad was a bank, he wore suits every day in Peru. That's where I'm from, Lima, Peru. And his first job here was a dishwasher in L'Enfant Plaza. Mm. And not because he wasn't smart, not because, he couldn't find any other jobs, per se, right? Because they needed him to speak English. That was just the first thing that he needed. He needed to make some money for us, right?
Right.
And he took that job, humbled himself, and that taught me a lesson, right? That taught me a lesson that you got to do what it takes. And both my parents gave me the opportunity to come to this country to make a better version of myself.
Absolutely.
To fulfill, a dream, which is the American dream. And talk about mindset. That has set the tone to who I am right now. So grateful for the opportunities, right? So grateful for being able to make my life through my sweat, through my passion, through my drive. There's going to be challenges. Of course there's going to be challenges. The life is going to punch you in the face, straight up, knock you down, right? But it's how you take those punches and those challenges and you get up. Right? And that was a huge punch for my dad, I would imagine, right? At early 30s, having to, being in suits and managing businesses and stuff like that, to washing dishes. That was, what I mean?
Right.
Like, he needed to do what he needed to do for his family. And just a little story about him. He worked several other jobs, being able to get us a green card and a citizenship, and then ended up working at the U.S. Postal Service, and at the Postal Service, retired the Postal Service, and now he's retiring, enjoying life. And
how many years at the Postal Service?
I think he was like 20 something. Yeah, I think 20. It was 20 something. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's amazing to see that, success. And then my mom has always been there by my side always, right? Just a Hispanic woman, just working also, but taking care of the kids, always telling me, hey, stay straight on the right road, right? Don't deviate. And both of them always been my champions into creating this confident individual that anything is possible, right?
Right.
That anything is possible as long as you put your passion to it, as long as you have that vision, that clarity, and you treat people with kindness. That came from my mom. That came from my dad. You have to treat people well, right?
Love it. Yeah.
So a little bit more about myself that you may not have known in the past, but the serendipity, coming back to that, is just such a thing for me. A passionate individual where sometimes you don't know who you're going to meet, right? Like in your path. So there was and I'm not going to name names, but there was a gentleman that came to me once that I met through aviation, and I met him because somebody introduced me to him, right? And this person was recently sold his business and was in this government space, right? And had a plane and all these different things. And he took me under his wing, basically, to show me the ropes in the aviation side. But then also when I needed support on the business side, there were some challenging things. And he looked at me in the eyes and said, I came to him and I said, hey, you know me and you know my vision and my passion. There's something that I need, right? And I even had a presentation laid out with like PowerPoints and all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't need to see any of that. He's like, I know who you are and I know who you're going to be.
Wow.
Here you go. Like, who does that?
Yeah.
And little things like that, right? I mean, and I have another one as it relates to my wife. True serendipity. I should have started with this one, but I'll share it one more time. And this episode is becoming more about me, man. I don't know about this. I landed in, as I already said, in 1991. I landed in January 25th, 1991. And why I'm sharing that date is because my wife was turning 10 years old that day.
January 25th.
Yeah, January 25th, 1991. She was turning 10 when I landed in the States. And my story is, I landed here on your birthday looking for you. I met this lady at the West Virginia University. I know you're a Hokie, so we'll talk about that later. Chemistry class. It was the second class. It was a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It was a Wednesday class. I walk in and she was sitting in the front row. I'm not a extrovert, but I'm also not a shy person. I sat next to her, and the rest is history.
There it is.
We've been married for 23 years now.
23 years.
Known her for 25 almost, right?
Yeah.
And it's just amazing. So there's
I love it.
2 stories.
A couple of stories that are just amazing. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm the 25th episode.
There you go.
25 is,
Oh my gosh.
is our number today.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. You're right. There you go.
Yes. Yeah.
But thank you for asking me that question. And I think, and I think you also asked the other question, any surprises from the last 24 episodes?
Yeah, 24 episodes, yeah.
In the reality, I got to tell you, I started this podcast to show the world of what amazing people we have, right? Like, there's so many amazing, great leaders out there that are passionate about what they do. They believe in leading with kindness, in leading their team, right? And rising together, right? So I continue to see a theme, which when I first started, I was like, I don't know about this. Do I do this? Do I not do this? I did not want to do it, right? And then the episode 5th, I was like, man, this is not making sense. But now 25th episode, it's like, it feels like natural. It feels like this is one of the things I'm supposed to be doing. It
right.
feels like, and to communicate with the world about leadership and being kind and leading with empathy and empowering our people to be whatever they want to be as long as they're kind, right? And they're treating people well, right? But nothing really has surprised me besides surprising myself that this is valid, that this is it's impacting people's lives. So
that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's a few other questions that now let me flip it back on you, right? Thanks.
I'm going to be the host now.
Yeah, right. I talk about mindset. I'm talking about the mindset that my parents taught me, and the mindset that I'm teaching my kids, and I'm teaching others through this. From a growth and scarcity mindset, what do you? I know Microsoft is huge on the growth mindset, and I'm sure you experienced that. I know Javi talked about it and a few others, right?
Yeah.
What do you think about that? I mean, I would love your opinion on that.
I love growth mindset. Yes, we were taught a lot about that at Microsoft. For me, 2 things come to mind for growth mindset is 1, embracing the challenge, and 2, the inspiration that you get from the work of others. With regard to embracing the challenges, is taking the challenges as opportunities for growth versus avoiding them as fear or unknowns. I think a good example of this that I've watched in awe and with inspiration is what SpaceX has accomplished. They understand that there's a great challenge of launching the world's biggest rocket, the BFR. And there's a high probability of failure, and they understand that there's still a win in this. And, on the last launch, I think they said the payload is the data, what we learn from this launch and from this test. The inspiration that I gain and others can gain from the work of others is, instead of feeling threatened by the success of others, celebrate those achievements and learn from them, use them as motivation for what you can accomplish. I think of the browser wars. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Microsoft versus, I think it was Firefox.
That's right. Yep.
Mozilla. And there was a tradition, if you recall, that Microsoft maybe started, I don't know if it was Mozilla or Microsoft, where they sent each other cakes for the product launches.
Oh, that's funny. I didn't know that.
Right. And it's a cool story. And then it's also one of inspiration and challenging each other, in that case, Microsoft and Mozilla, to outdo each other. And I think that's one that I like to do too, is like, instead of saying, why couldn't I do that? Or, why weren't we able to accomplish that? What can I learn from others, from an individual, from a team, from another company? And what can I be inspired to achieve based on that work? So I think embracing the challenge and certainly the inspiration that I can gain and that we can gain from others is something I like. That's personal to me and what I think about in growth mindset.
Beautiful. So it's about really appreciating whether the successes or the improvements or the things that the other individual or company or whatever, right? Learn from those, right?
Well, I'll just say one thing. I like the word you used. You said appreciation.
Yeah.
And I think there is an appreciation that comes, deep down from me, as an appreciation of what others can do, an appreciation of what everybody contributes to the common goal and the vision from different departments and different pieces of the company or the organization of the team. We all have a contribution to make, and I tend to approach it or a start of appreciation.
Yeah. And I agree. Now, what I was going to say is, alongside with appreciation, is gratitude.
Good word.
Gratitude is something that as I started college after I met my wife, is one of those things that I was very grateful. The minute I realized, look at the things that I have. A lot of people are living in the future like, oh, I don't have this, or I need to have this. So-and-so has this, or this other company is doing X, Y, and Z, right? And you appreciate them from it, like, oh, they probably work hard on it. But sometimes people forget to look within inside.
Sure.
And what are you grateful for what you've done? What are you grateful for what you have? Right. And that's a big question that the minute I started asking to myself in my early 20s, it changed my life in a way that, okay, well, I don't need to be thinking about what's going to come. Yeah, I can visualize it and that's my goal or whatever. But what do I have now at this particular moment? And the minute you start appreciating what you have is the minute when you start attracting the things that you don't have.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said.
You ever experienced anything like that?
I do. I think about my family and what I have, and I'm very appreciative of that, and kind of stepping outside of the day-to-day to look outside and say, this is pretty cool. And the love and the laughter that the family has together and how that's all come together, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I think for me, sometimes I need to take that step outside, maybe physically and figuratively, because I like to work, and there's a time where I need to take the break to see and appreciate people and family and friends.
Beautiful. Well said. Yeah, I love to work too, and family definitely appreciates the time for sure. All right, as it relates to talking about our family and our kids, what do you see the vision for future for leadership? As now I'm feeling the shift into leading with kindness and all the different things. What is that vision? What do you see?
Well, I mean, what we're seeing in society with technology and the pace of innovation is certainly a transformation. Artificial intelligence and economic development across the globe and different conflicts across the globe. I think there's certainly a couple things that come to mind for me as far as the vision for the future. And one would be fundamental truths. How can we get to those fundamental truths, those facts, and think through feedback loops? Second is, how can we learn and improve based on a fundamental truth? And then third, I would say, is maybe more of a business structure or operational thing, but something that I have seen be very successful in organizations is each part or process must be owned by someone, not a department.
Right.
Having worked at larger organizations comes back to kind leadership and growth mindset and things that we've talked about already is those fundamental truths, the feedback loops, but most importantly, when you look at an organization, especially if you're working in an organization that's larger, is how do you ensure that each part or process is owned by an individual? How do you ensure that there is personal responsibility and accountability for results and improvement?
Beautiful. Beautiful. That's a great, the way you broke it up it's a great vision into what the impact, especially with AI, right? Things are going to start getting faster and faster and faster, right? And people are going to need the time to take a step back and really take a big picture on what's needed, and then responsibility on those individuals you're talking about. So well said. Thank you for sharing them. All right, as we're coming down on our descent here, finishing up here, one of my favorite questions is, if you could have coffee with anyone alive or from the past, who would it be and why?
As I think about that question, there's kind leadership. Learning from history and experience is a really important thing. There's historical leaders. There's more recent history that we can learn from. And then there's our own experience. Mm-hmm. You put those into a blender and you mix it up, right, together to make it your own. But historical leaders as like Lincoln and Mandela, you can learn from that history that we read about. There's a podcast that I was listening to more recently, Acquired. And, Howard Schultz, I think, from Starbucks. Okay. He was talking about how Starbucks got started.
Wow.
And one of the things that struck me as I was thinking about coming here to visit with you is, I did not know this, but he was the first to introduce, or one of the first companies to introduce, comprehensive health for part-time employees.
Wow.
And, I thought about that in association with the kind leadership topic that we have here, and stock options. I think he also did too. Your question, there's a lot of great people in life. I'll be very vulnerable here probably. I lost my biological mother before I was 2 years old. So I'd like to have coffee with her.
Wow. That's very, thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
That will be an amazing conversation, I'm sure.
Sure.
So much to say, so much I'm sure she'll be excited to hear all the great successes that you've done, and, about, where we are, where you're going. So, and I'm sure she's very proud of you.
Absolutely. But
thank you for sharing. That will be an amazing time to have coffee for. So we've had a phenomenal conversation, Kevin. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a busy guy, but coming in and sharing and being vulnerable, as well as some great tips on being a kind leader and what our guests could potentially be learning from, right? So
absolutely.
You said earlier people can connect with you on LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn, easily search Kevin Briggs, right? And
sure.
Any other places where people can connect, or just LinkedIn?
I'm on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it, Twitter X. K.E. Briggs, KEBRIGGS.
Perfect.
So yeah, thank you for hosting this. Thank you for the 24 episodes you've put in the can already. Mm-hmm. And the experience I've had here. I've never put on a headset and done one of these like so formally, and it's been an experience for me, and I appreciate you and what I've learned from you, and some of the episodes that I've browsed, and the great people that you've had on this, and the great people you will have on it. And for me, certainly some of the things that I've shared here, I'm not perfect by any means. And like Javier said in the Learn It All, it's something I think about a lot is how can I improve, and how can I step out of that moment and learn from a situation, and grow as a person, and help the team grow as well.
Absolutely. It was beautiful. That was actually my other question, your final thoughts, but that was well said. Absolutely. No, it's been a pleasure. And there's always great nuggets to learn from every individual. We're all different in our own ways, and nobody's perfect, right? And everybody tells you that. I don't know about that person, but thank you again. And I appreciate it. I'm sure our guests appreciate it. So thank you for joining us again and the guest for today. And I thank our audience for listening as well. And if you ever have any feedback or thoughts, just please send me an email, find me on LinkedIn or whatever. But I'll leave you with, be kind, bring value, rise together. Have an amazing day, everybody.
Thank you.